Hello, everyone. This is the Cluster Addons meeting. Today is Tuesday, the 10th of November, and we have a little bit of an agenda today. Last meeting, we talked about Evan's cap, but the manifest bundles, but it looks like there was no progress, so maybe just ping him and see if anything is still needs to be done. I think there was still some review feedback. You're shrugging just in.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it looked good. I think it was.
Okay.
I wouldn't even call it like blocking feedback. I just thought he wanted to do another round of comments on it, and then. But I think it's in good shape to merge.
Okay. So what do you suggest? Shall I ask him again, or will Lee
Yeah,
and you have a look over it and then?
Why don't we follow up with him and then see if he wants to add any comments, and if not, I propose we just merge it as is.
Super. Okay,
yeah.
We'll do. Yeah, and then we have Cluster Addons issue 88 from Christian. Christian, do you want to talk a little bit?
Yeah.
Super.
Welcome. Yeah, thanks. First time here, so bear with me if I screw anything up. But so I guess I'll start by saying I have a like a need to like forward some like DNS zone or like a set of DNS zones to like some upstream resolvers. And like I want to do this through like some sort of custom controller. And what I think is like this feels like it might fit within the core DNS operator, having some way to specify some set of DNS zones that forward to some set of upstream resolvers without actually modifying the core file. And I think like I want to like get away from directly modifying the core file, because I imagine that like there's just like complexity in that, and like I don't think like I want to have like my controller like take like ownership of this of the core file. Like other people might want to modify it, and like that just feels like it might still fit within like the purview of like core DNS operator. And this I'm hoping like this feels like something that's just like more generally applicable to like other like use cases. Like I feel like I imagine like forwarding to upstream resolvers just feels like a thing like many people might need to do. So I guess what I'm looking for is just feedback on if that feels like the right place to do this. And let me know if you have any questions.
Can I speak, Prakash here? First, when you are taking a DNS zone and transferring it, the core DNS deals with the DNS at the lower level, in the sense that it is for underlay. It's not dealing with anything to do with service. Second, if you have any DNS records, there has to be some authoritative DNS owner, and core DNS is a private DNS, I believe, because it is only dealing with the underlay network. So now if you bring something and slap in some zone into a private DNS, I'm not sure whether it makes sense, or the zones you are talking about, are they public zones? Are they private zones?
Yeah, they're private.
Okay, and then who, if they are private, who is the owner of that zone? only they have the authority to slap in something, right? Or inject something in.
Yeah, I guess the intention is that like the DNS that we want to add is just like in cluster, like similar, like I guess how cluster local might work. It's just we want something that's like not cluster local and it works based off some other like heuristics, I guess.
So you're talking that there are multiple clusters and each one has their own core DNS, or there is a common DNS to be spread across? What is this core file? Is that core file just the content of the records, or is it just a manifest of image? What is that core file means? Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, the core file that I am talking about is like the configuration for the like the core DNS that you deploy in a cluster. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, configurations are different from the zone records, right? So I can have one configuration which is just saying this is the configuration of the DNS that is deployed in terms of what the function it does. But the record in themselves are added based on what the local network is. That is the local zone, right? They are different.
Oh, sorry. Not sure I completely follow, but
So what I say is, if you have a application, DNS is nothing but an application, correct? Which manages the
Sure.
zones. And the zone records, are you saying the configuration of the records in that zone? That is like the A record, the pointer, all those? Or are you meaning the configuration of the deployment of the application, which is DNS?
So I guess the way I say it is like I want to just add an entire zone, like cluster.local and forward everything, all DNS requests for that zone to another DNS server, like that's running on Kubernetes, so that I can handle that in my own way, in my controller.
I think, if I may, I think Prakash, I think you raise a good point, which is that core DNS core DNS configures the internal DNS infrastructure inside the cluster, but it also like binds some subdomains to Kubernetes records, and so we'll effectively configure the records themselves, but it can also do like mapping, so it can do delegations, as is described here in Christian's issue, I guess. I imagine, I don't know for a fact, but I imagine you could probably explicitly list DNS records in a core file, or if not, then I'm sure it's not like impossible to imagine. I think I think the proposal here looks good. I think it is something we should raise with the core DNS folk, because I think one of the challenges of core DNS is that the core file is not a CRD or a set of CRDs, and so like in Christian's use case, we want to, I'd like to hear exactly why, but I can sort of imagine, I know of a couple of scenarios, so I can imagine, but you sort of want to keep most of the configuration standard Kubernetes, but then carve out a couple of DNS zones for forwarding to another DNS server. The two reasons that I know of are multi-cluster and some sort of private DNS record. So I'm interested to hear which one it is, but that doesn't really match with like the monolithic core file. So I think this is a good proposal. I really think we should also run it by core DNS and say that core DNS folk and say like, look, do you intend to expose more KRM granular configuration, or should we basically build that ourselves in an operator layer on top? Does that make sense, Christian?
Yeah, and I guess just to like speak more concretely about what we're doing, it is similar to basically like the multi-cluster like sort services use case. I think you could think of like Submariner and their like Lighthouse thing.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
So my thinking is that you can forward anything you want, which you don't know, which is the normal forwarding mechanism in DNS. However, if you are saying that you want to have within a given cluster, if I have a cluster, let's say cluster number 1 and cluster number 2, if cluster number 1 has some records in the zone and you want additional zones to be recognized there, you can add another zone, not a problem. But then whether the authority that private DNS is willing to give, because somebody may add some records, so you can have a non-authoritative probably access. That is possible. So that is one. Second, if it is anyway being resolved by the proxies, then forwarding to the right cluster. So is it a subcluster? Then the question comes, what you are doing. So some of these, I think some of the DNS experts are there in Infoblox or Core DNS who wrote. I think we should refer to them to get a clarity on this, because this involves a bit of a security risk, which is what I would like to avoid from my thinking as a DNS administrator, let's say.
I mean, I agree that we should, like, I don't think this is functionality which is not available today in the core file. So I think, like, as you say, Prakash, it is a good idea to loop in core DNS and say, look, are we okay with these problems? I feel like one of the advantages of splitting off different CRDs is that you can better use RBAC, for example, to say like, well, these users are allowed to set up DNS zones and these users are not, and these users are allowed to configure this other thing, right? So it can be more granular than just saying like you can change the core file or you can't, because there are things you can do which are bad ideas and we might not want to allow everyone to do. So I think this makes sense, and I think, Christian, I don't know if you're able to like basically open a similar issue pointing to this in the core DNS repository. I think from our point of view, it would be fine to build this in an operator as a sort of either if core DNS has no interest in doing so, or if they would like us to sort of prototype it and eventually, with a view to eventually having a more Kubernetes native DNS core file. I think the thing we want to avoid is if they have intention to do it but want to do it differently, right? We don't want to like go off in a different direction.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and yeah, I think that feedback is good. So just to make sure I understand, you're talking about just like the normal like CoreOS or is it CoreOS Core DNS?
It's
I'm
yes,
forgetting.
I don't think it's CoreOS. It's
just Core DNS. Sorry.
It's something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm getting my companies mixed up. So just open a GitHub issue there pointing to the operator.
I think that to your issue, yes, I think that makes a ton of sense. Like say, look, I have this sort of use case inside of Kubernetes, and in general in Kubernetes, like the core file is harder to manage in a Kubernetes native way. And how would you feel about us doing this? Do you care? Do you want to do something differently? That sort of thing.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Cool.
But I like this idea a lot. Like managing the core file is always tricky because none of the available Kubernetes technologies work brilliantly with non-KRM objects. Like, you know, like you get into complicated Helm templates, or like customized sort of struggles a little bit. You know, it would be nice to have a more Kubernetes native expression of these things.
Right. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Christian. This is great, and welcome. This is a wonderful first contribution.
Yep.
we have any more feedback or questions or agenda items?
Hi, this is Joji. So I had a question, if everything else is done.
Yeah, please ask.
Yeah, so my question was actually about kubeADM. So I'm not sure if this is the right SIG for it, but I saw there were a couple of issues which basically covers the idea that using kubeADM, you can have some add-ons to bootstrap the cluster. For example, the CNI, right? I mean, or any similar infrastructure that I would like to have when I boot up a cluster. So I saw some issues there that has been raised. I think some of them were like partly worked on and not resolved. So it's just wondering, what is the direction? Is there any room for pursuing that path? Because I do have a requirement to be able to install some things by default when I bring up a cluster. And if I can bootstrap that using kubeADM, that would be great. So I wanted to get a general sense. I'm quite willing to contribute, but I saw somebody had already worked on it. So I was wondering if there was any reason not to pursue it, or is this not the right SIG, etc. So any general direction will really be helpful.
It's a pity Lee's not here today, because Lee is probably more up to date on this. I think in general, we are trying to build the add-ons and get them integrated into the various tools. I work primarily on COPS or KOPS, and so I can speak more about what we're doing there. We're not integrated yet into KOPS either. I think kubeADM is also not integrated yet, and there are ongoing discussions about like exactly how we should go about doing that. I feel like it seems likely that KOPS is going to go first, and we can probably use that as a little needle to poke kubeADM into faster action. But a friendly competition never hurt anyone. But yes, I think the answer is, from my point of view, we have to demonstrate value. And so that means building the operators that work and demonstrating that they can fit into things. So I'm going to try to demonstrate that it can fit into KOPS, and hopefully that will be enough to persuade kubeADM to be more to take the next steps. I feel like it is we haven't demonstrated that value, so it's not unreasonable of them not to have done it yet. But if you want to help demonstrate that value, that would be wonderful. If there are particular CNI plugins you want, it would be wonderful to try. And we don't have an operator for it already. It'd be wonderful to try, if you were willing to try building one using the cluster add-on sort of approach and contributing it and giving us any feedback about what you experience doing so. Depending on exactly how kubeADM works. Yeah, I mean, you can always, I think you can turn off, or you just don't enable CNI in kubeADM by default. So you would essentially manually apply that operator afterwards. And then the integration would be some sort of automatic single step application. But you can develop and prototype where you use kubeADM to create your cluster, and then you apply your operator to it. And I don't know which CNI are you, which CNI is your favorite?
Nothing in particular at the moment, because my interest is mostly bootstrapping a cluster. So the user might specify a particular CNI, or I might have like a list of CNIs that I want to deploy, give them a choice, right? So right now, like you said, the workflow is I create the cluster using kubeADM. It comes with core DNS, right? And then I need to apply the CNI manually. So what I wanted to do is actually I wanted to create the cluster and forget it, right? I don't want to keep access to the cluster, right? If I have to apply, then I need to keep the credentials to the cluster. That's what I was trying to avoid. So if I can do that, to do that, I would have to bootstrap it into kubeADM. And I looked at kubeADM code, and it is kind of hard coded. So there is no way, unless I change kubeADM source itself, there's no way for me to do it right now. And that's when I started looking at the issues, and I saw somebody had already made some proposal and some work, and it did not been, it's not been.
Yeah, Prakash here, can I speak? Can I speak? Yeah. So what what I found is in the kubeadm, if you don't specify CNI, then obviously you cannot do any of the network functions that you want to do outside of what you have internally. So when I tried to install without CNI, I found in the records of Kubernetes document that you have to install CNI before even you do it. At least a CNI etc some cube slash
Sure.
CNI must exist
Yeah, sure.
before
So I
even you
think,
can do it.
yeah, sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think you're right. When you install Kubernetes, you have to say you're going to use a CNI, and only then I think you can actually apply
Yeah,
it.
then not only that, in the op directory where there is a CNI drivers, default it Calico is the one, and if you follow the Calico CNI implementation, then that is quite different than what the normal kubeadm does. So there is some scope for improvement, and definitely I think your observation is correct, and you should, I think, propose something if you have any ideas.
Okay,
And
I'll
go after it. Yeah, I think we'll support you. We'll support you definitely.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, so the manual workflow works great. I haven't run into any issues. It's just that I don't want to have, like I said, I don't want to have the cluster credentials because I'm potentially creating multiple clusters, and I don't want to have access to the config after I create it. That's basically the problem I'm trying to solve. So yeah, so
no. So credentials are just you copy it, right? You just have the cube. There is a file which is copied into a specific place. That's it. So the credentials they are different for different clusters, unless you are talking of master and the that is control plane versus the workload nodes. So if it is part of the same cluster, you will have the same files which are copied, right, from upstream for the security purpose, whatever the keys are there for different objects.
no.
So even if you go to another cluster, of course you are going to create based on the control plane node.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. Sorry. So the way at least the workflow that I'm familiar with, you use kubeadm to deploy the cluster. It comes up with certain. So for example, it comes with core DNS, right? And then I have to deploy the CNI myself. Typically, it's applied as a YAML, which is basically a set of Kubernetes resources.
Correct.
Now, to deploy that, I need to have admin credentials, which is what I don't want to hold on to because I may be creating clusters on behalf of somebody else, right? And I just want to create the cluster with a certain specification and be done with it. I don't want to do anything with the cluster after that. So that's basically my use case. So,
but that is, you are in the local, right? Yours is a direct on command line. So you are sitting inside the system and trying to do something which you are allowed because you have the credentials. But if you are remote, then you have to get access to that, right? So that means that's a role binding basically. Anyway, you propose something and we'll review. And
yeah,
I'm pretty
absolutely.
sure that
So I will do that. So I was just trying to loop back to something Justin was saying earlier. So you mentioned KOps and you suggested that I try something. Can you just repeat that part? I didn't fully capture it. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was saying if you wanted to try creating a CNI, if you had a CNI that was your favorite, as it were, or like, it would be super helpful to, stepping back. I think the thing that we're missing in cluster add-ons is we have to show there are these great set of add-ons, the add-on operators that work to install all the pieces. And then the tooling will be like, well, it's so much easier to use those existing add-ons. And so like KOps will do that, and kubeadm will presumably do that as well. So if you wanted to create like the value in this wealth of add-on operators, like, you mentioned the CNI, CNI providers, can't remember the word, sorry. But if you wanted to create an operator for one of those, or like that you like, then that would be a wonderful way to do it. And that would be a great contribution.
Okay, so let me look at that, and let me try to come up with a proposal. So the way to make a proposal is to open an issue.
That's a great way to start. Yes. If you're going to contribute an operator, you probably don't even need to do an issue, unless there's some surprising behavior in that operator. But I would be surprised, to be honest. Maybe there is, but starting with a PR for a new operator is absolutely fine. For things like how do we tackle certain things, I think an issue is a great place to start. Sometimes in Kubernetes, we ask for a KEP, which is like a more formal design proposal. I guess that's but an issue is much easier, and worst case, the discussion in the issue can inform the KEP and help people understand the background for a KEP. So, and often we can avoid doing a KEP if it's just if there's general consensus and it's not that.
Yeah, if you want to do something commercial value, go with Calico. Otherwise, Flannel is too little, and so is Weave. Probably Weave can be optional second, but Calico would be preferred if I think. L3, anything L3 is better.
I think one thing I've learned about CNI providers is that everyone has a different favorite CNI provider. So
exactly. That's also my point is also not to favor any particular CNI.
Everyone's allowed to have their own favorite, and everyone should write the operator for their favorite. But try to persuade other people of the merits of their particular CNI provider is an uphill battle. That's what I've learned.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the other thing I had was, so the operator model actually is not going to work for me. My goal is to actually be able to deploy the operator automatically, right? So let's say I have the operator for the CNI, which actually most CNI providers themselves will define. But I'm really only talking about automating that apply the operator. That's basically what I'm trying to automate. So the way at least I'm imagining is this will be some way to specify when you run kubeadm. You have an option to either apply add-ons or not. It's just that the list of add-ons that you can add is kind of fixed. There is no way to say, in addition to what you do, I want to have this CNI operator. Maybe I want this monitoring operator, etc., etc. So these are like cluster infrastructure that I would like to think of, like more like core DNS. We do deploy core DNS, but pretty much nothing else. So that's where I was thinking this would belong. So like, I mean, core DNS itself, people have operators on top of the core DNS, like autoscalers and stuff like that, right? So similar to that, I should be able to say, I want to add this custom add-on.
So you're looking for generic, you means you're looking for a generic add-on to be applied, not just CNI, anything.
A generic way to deploy a custom add-on. That's what I
Okay, good. That's a good idea, but still you'll need to show one at least.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
I can.
Yeah, I mean, I think to that point, I think one of the things in KOps that we've had for a while, not having cluster add-ons, is just the ability to specify a manifest that can be downloaded and automatically managed. I don't know if kubeadm has that. Maybe they do. It would be nice if they did. It's not. It's a nice feature that is like generally useful, right, for people that want to do like just a little bit more. And as you say, you could use that to install your operator. One of the more challenging operators to integrate are the ones where kubeadm or KOps has sort of already done an integration, and you sort of have to like disable the built-in ones or like transition. That's harder. But as I understand it, kubeadm does not currently install CNI, so fingers crossed it will be a little bit easier. It will be more like just installing an arbitrary manifest, which is a nice feature for anyone, right? A lot of people want to install their applications, for example, or want to install like Weave Flux or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So thanks for the direction. So this is the right SIG for it, though, right? Or I should.
We are half of it. The KubeADM folk are also they meet Wednesdays around this time.
Okay. So.
But yes, demonstrating the value and creating value, I think, is half of it, and then we can try to persuade KubeADM to support arbitrary manifests. I think that's a good first step, and then to support add-ons.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
But Lee is normally here, and I don't know if you saw, by the way, Daniel posted in chat some interesting links.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah. Thank
Cool.
you. I think these are the ones that I had looked at too. Okay. All right. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Super. Do we have anything else? All right. Let's wrap up early then. Great rest of your day, everyone, and see you in 2 weeks.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Sounds good. Thank you.